Peace. Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation today. Folks, I got so many great conversations to have with you. First and foremost, let's talk about the Gate of the Exonerated. This is the great monument that was unveiled in New York City in honor of the formerly known Central Park 5 boys. We're going to talk about what this unveiling means and how it adds to the culture and to justice. We'll have that conversation. Also, let's talk about the limited Netflix series Dahmer, how it had won an award at the Golden Globes, but the victims of the families aren't happy about that. We'll bring you the latest and how we can have a conversation about actors' roles in real life tragedies. We'll talk about that. Also, I want to talk about today is officially National Quitters Day. Have you put it on your New Year's resolution just yet? I'm going to break it down for you what the studies say and how you can stay motivated. And then later, of course, we got Dr. King. We're celebrating him all this weekend here on the Black Star Network. So make sure that you do your part and ask yourself, what am I going to do for the dream to bring that dream into reality? Plus, I got trends both and doing the most. So stay with us. There's a lot to get to on today's edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, peace and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. All right, folks, it is officially Friday, so happy Friday. And this is the weekend of celebrating the life and the great legacy and the great work and mission of Dr. King. So we're going to certainly talk about what our beloved brother has done and how he continues to be celebrated and why he needs to be honored. We'll have that conversation later on. But first, I know this is certainly something that Dr. King would have loved to see had he been with us today. Let's first start talking about the Gate of the Exonerated. This is a monument that was installed and unveiled in New York City in honor of those 5 Black men who were accused of rape in that Central Park case, that famous Central Park 5 case. Now that we don't call them the Central Park 5, we call them the Exonerated 5. Here's the breakdown, folks, of what happened in this last month as we look at this fantastic monument for social justice. Here's the word around this. The monument is actually marked the plight of these 5 young Black teens who were known in 1989 as the Central Park 5, now known as freedom fighters for justice for the wrongfully incarcerated, the Exonerated 5. Now, speakers reflected on the Central Park jogger rape case in 1989 that falsely accused and convicted 5 youths, Antron McCray, Kevin Richardson, Yusef Salaam, Corey Wise, and Raymond Santana. These teenagers were 14 and 15 years old at the time and were pressured and coerced under interrogation by officers without any physical evidence, legal representation, or even having their parents present. They served 7 to 11 years in prison. Their convictions were overturned in 2002 after a convicted serial rapist confessed to being the only one responsible for the gruesome attack on that day in Central Park. Now, according to the mother of Yusef Salaam, she said, this gate means that we will be remembered as the Exonerated 5 and not the Central Park 5. It means that all of us in this community, we can feel uplifted knowing the struggle and the perseverance that took place to get to this moment. Ms. Sharon Salaam, mother of Yusef Salaam, said this when talking about this. Take a look at this, folks. Take a look at these pictures here. Gate of the Exonerated 5. Man, this is absolutely powerful, 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 powerful right here. And this is something that, you had a cross-section of activists, faith leaders, city officials, a lot of folks, celebrities and other folks who remember this case. If you're from New York, or even if you're around the New York area, and back in 1989, this case made national headlines. And so it has become a constant conversation about those who have been wrongly accused. It's been a huge part of the conversation about Black boys being interrogated and coerced in police presence. And it certainly has opened the doors for larger conversation about everything from the criminal justice system to how we treat Black youth. Now, one of the more famous movies, and if you haven't seen this movie by Ava DuVernay, you got to check it out. It's very hard to watch. And let me just say that When They See Us. And let me tell you, I'm familiar with the case. I was a little boy then, but I know what the case is about now. But when you see that movie, it really resonated. It struck a chord. So I'm just really, really happy to see. Yep, there it is, folks. When they see us, my gosh, this is a powerful, powerful story that Ava DuVernay. This is probably I think it was one of her best films that she has done, especially around this issue. So big shout out to her, and big shout out to those Black men who turned their pain into some real power. Now, I want to bring in my Culture Crew member, my brother Rashad Staten, who is a nonprofit leader. He is an activist. He's an advocate. He's a brother who came from humble beginnings in the streets of East Baltimore and has risen to becoming a true voice for those who are voiceless. So I'm so happy that he is always able to join us on the conversation. My brother Rashad, thank you so much, bro. I know you've been rocking, rolling, and working over these past few weeks, so it's good to have you back on today.
Hey, peace and blessings, brother. Happy Friday, man.
Happy
Always
Friday.
Culture, bro.
Absolutely. All right, first and foremost, what's your take of this, Rashad? This is now the gate of the Exonerated Five. This is a major monument for justice in New York City. Is this something that just had to be done in your eyes?
I think, in the space of where we are in society, I think one thing is to be mindful is to recognize a win for a win, right?
Right.
I personally see this as a win, but the win is even more importantly because it helps shift the narrative, right? Language is important. Intersectionality is one of the buzzwords and things that we're hearing all the time. And how we identify ourselves is often how people perceive us. So for them to, in a sense, to go back and rewrite history with intentional language of exonerated versus what was the latter, I think is intentional, and it shows us moving in a great direction. But it also sets precedents of what we can do in other places and other cities, and how we debunk who was our heroes versus who was our villains, and who was our victims versus who are the oppressor. And I think this plays a part in it. The gate itself is a monument that will always be historically relevant, but it also brings a space of how we can now hold our justice system accountable to rewrite their own wrongs. So I think this is a great step forward. I think it acts and puts a anchor in that community of, I think, knowing the history of the Central Park period when it comes to Black folks has not always been the most advantageous story, or a place where we always felt safe, or ways that we've been always displaced from it. So having these young men experience that years ago, and having some of them still be surviving and living men that can still see, having impacted themselves, but can see how the framing and the narrative that was imposed to them when they were so young and impressionable, to now receiving their flowers and receiving this, they can remove themselves from the guilt and accountability that shouldn't have been placed on them from the get-go. So I think it's a great point of forward.
I think I would definitely agree with you, bro. And I think that you started your remarks talking about the space that we're in as a society. It's crazy because 1989, New York City. I mean, if you're from New York, if you're from around that part of the country, we grew up in Baltimore. It's very similar in terms of some of the social justice ills. Drugs was heavy on the streets, especially in the Black community, hit us hard, from New York to Baltimore to Philly. A lot of profiling of Black men by police. I remember in Baltimore, man, Baltimore City, it didn't get quite as much headlines as, say, the NYPD, but Baltimore City police were knocking heads back then. You're profiling young Black men. And one of the things that speaks to me is, like, we made some gains, and I think we made some gains because we can recognize it. But I think that the system of the criminal justice system, whether you're talking about the courts, whether you're talking about the penal institutions, very slow. They're very slow to catch up. I mean, these brothers still had to spend a chunk of their life in prison. Then you had, I mean, this situation happened in 1989. They didn't get cleared until the early 2000s, right? And we were still calling them Central Park 5 probably over the, up until the past 3 years or so.
Up until the film itself, right?
Until the film dropped, and it was like, no, now they exonerated 5. And I know some people probably still refer to these black men as the Central Park 5.
Yep.
And so it's, I'm asking, like, how far do you think we've come in this process? Because we're still dealing with some of the same issues of police profiling. You're still dealing with black boys being thrown into the system, criminal justice system, juvenile detention, and penal system. How far do you think we've come from that moment?
I think I'm speaking. I don't think we came too far. One, but I'm gonna acknowledge it as a win. One, I don't think we came too far because it's still in a space of case by case basis, and in certain places it's state by state basis, right? And then it's local jurisdiction basis. So if we can have this magic wand that sweeps it out, and we take it from the federal or the state level to say, hey, we need a larger committee or things to look over all of the folks that have been wrongfully convicted and incarcerated and imprisoned for years on, and how do we work towards that? That'll be a complete overhaul of our justice system, and it would negate the whole operation and the intent of this country if we are to be a true reality, right? But with this case-by-case basis and knowing the justice system, you need precedents to put in place so that others can see as replicable and take these templates to move their framework to other proximities. And I think that's what it's done. And like you said, unconsciously and consciously, we have been indoctrinated with seeing these men and label them as the Central Park 5, that it has a direct connotation to criminalization. Once you says exonerated, it then causes us to say, well, what happened? What level of injustice have they incurred and endured for us to now look at the justice system versus us looking at their actions? And what we've learned was these actions weren't their faults at all. They were wrongfully convicted, imprisoned, and lost decades of time, and has impacted their lives. And that case in itself, in the original point, was one of the ones that propelled the further incarceration and criminalization of black folks. So now that they have been exonerated, we're starting to see statues and monuments. Then we must do a rallying cry to say, hey, we now have a precedent set. Let's go and take this state by state. Let's go to Georgia. Let's go to Mississippi. Let's go to Maryland. Let's go to all of these places that have high populations of incarcerating black and brown people.
Absolutely. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to continue the conversation with Rashad. I want to bring your comments into the discussion as we're talking about the Gate of the Exonerated 5 being unveiled in New York City. This is the new monument dedicated to those 5 black men who were black teenagers in that great case of the Central Park rape back in 1989. Of course, they have been exonerated. They have become organizers and activists and advocates. And now they are looking to create or redefine the narrative around their lives with this new monument. Just throw your comments in the chat, and we'll continue the discussion on the other side. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland@RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, we have been talking about the gates of the Exonerated Five, a new monument that has been unveiled in New York City, dedicated to those 5 Black men who were falsely accused of rape in that great case of 1989 of the Central Park Five. Look at that, folks. They have cemented and are redefining the narrative about who they are and what they have done in their lives. We've been talking to my brother, Rashad, who a culture crew member, to kind of get his take on it. And we want to hear from you. Make sure you post your comments in the chat as we're streaming live right now on YouTube, Facebook, and Black Star Network. Rashad, the other part about this conversation, and which I think is very, very important for us to keep in mind, is this idea that you do have to work, and we're seeing it. Black men have to work to change the narrative about their lives. There are so many of us, right, that may have done some things in our youth, not to this level. And these brothers really didn't do anything wrong. They were just simply there at the wrong time. They were profiled. They were falsely accused. But for those who have either been in that situation or who actually have been the perpetrators of things in our youth and are working to kind of get past that, try to redeem ourselves, there doesn't seem to be much redemption for young Black men. And as we go into manhood, right? Like those things carry on with us for the rest of our lives. I want to know from you, bro, how do Black men and how can the Black community let go of some of those things? What can we do? Unless, because we see it a lot. I know Black men who was like, yeah, I used to be this way in the streets, but now I've changed my life. I got exposed to some knowledge. I've got exposed to some opportunities, and I've changed my life. But there still seems to be those barriers that a lot of young Black men face. And I know you work with a lot of brothers who are in that space now. So what do you tell them to do?
Yeah, I think one, that's loaded, brother, and it definitely has to be individualized to each personal experience. But being in the work and myself, even enduring some of those experiences as well, no one's perfect. But in our space of imperfection, we must take accountability, and I think that's the first part. Being someone that perpetuated it, or someone that was falsely accused of something that's not their actions at all. The one is the level of accountability. And once that level of accountability of righting your wrongs and identifying your role and how you have impacted others is the first part of a level of awareness. Once you get that level of accountability, then you must ask for forgiveness, right? For how you're being, if you believe in self, and then ask for forgiveness for yourself, but also those that you've impacted and have perpetuated those in. Now, it's not, you can't deem whether someone is going to see it worthy to accept your apology or receive your forgiveness in good faith. But once you receive that answer in yourself and you feel as though I've taken accountability, I've asked for forgiveness, and now I want to forgive myself, that's the first 2 steps. Now, when it comes to your community and how others perceive you, man, that's a weight that shouldn't be put on you at all. Because most people only want to remember you in a space that makes them comfortable for themselves, or how they can angle themselves as a position to leverage them over you, or have something over you so that they can get something out of you, right? And that just comes back to what politics is, right? Most people do politics with people's character and integrity, which is not the level of humanity. But once we say, I have changed my ways, I have changed my thinking, one way to reinforce or try to change other people's perception is just to carry on with different actions. And I think once you carry on for different actions, how can someone question the actions when they're visible, they're upfront, and it shows some level of consistency? And I think that over time will help you rewrite any wrongs that has been done.
Absolutely, that's a great point. I love those recommendations. I want to post just a little, and Keenan, if we can, I want to put this little statistic up to show the numbers of folks that have been falsely accused. Because according to the Georgia Innocence Project, folks, I mean, and these might sound like small numbers, but when you compare them to the numbers of folks that are actually in prison, like America loves locking people up. Lock more people up in this country than probably any other quote unquote civilized country in the world. But according to the Georgia Innocence Projects, the studies estimate that between 4 to 6% of people incarcerated in U.S. prisons are actually innocent. 4 to 6%. If 5% of individuals are actually innocent, that means that 1 out of 20, take a look at these numbers, folks. That means that 1 out of 20 criminal cases result in a wrongful conviction. So imagine that. Just look at the numbers. We got a lot of people in prison in this country. A lot of people in prison. So we if you look at that, how many, if they are actually innocent, and that number could go up. It could go up. Mm-hmm. I don't see that number going down, unfortunately, because of the nature of the criminal justice system. All right, let me go to some of what of our online culture crew is saying. And Straight Iron, I hope I'm saying that. Straight Iron Style, I like your comment, and I'm glad that you're joining us. You said, I was in the same high school as Raymond Santana Jr., and I was devastated. We all were, because we knew them, and we knew the police lied on them. The media helped the police. Brother, I could only imagine being in school with you, and you see a friend or homeboy, somebody you see in school, and the next thing you know, they gone. And then you see their faces on the news. You see them being demonized, vilified. You see them, and you just like, I mean, as a child, you know, you're 13, 14, 15 years old. You understand things, but you like, let me tell y'all, I'm going to go back to that movie When They See Us. Man, oh, man. The way that these, and big shout out to all of the actors in this story, man. But the movie, there were scenes in there, I damn near cried, Rashad.
Yep,
because
same.
One of the brothers had a mental health breakdown. Like he had mental health, a real breakdown. First, because he wasn't really catching on to like why he was there, and the police were just jamming him. I mean, just jamming constantly. What, you know, telling, you know, forcing him to say something that he didn't do, and they broke him down, brother. And it was just so disheartening to see it. And so I can only imagine, back to Straight Iron Style, you know, I can only imagine being in a space where you have no parents, no legal representation. You're in this, you're talking to police for 7, 8 hours, 9 hours as a child about something serious. They throwing in big time in your face. Oh, just tell us and we can cut some time for you. Like, I didn't do anything.
Right.
It blows me away. Tiana, you bring up a point. You said the gate is nice and all, but their childhood was snatched away, and that can't be replaced.
Absolutely.
Nope.
Absolutely.
Nope.
That's one. I agree. Yeah.
You're right.
It comes down to what Elspeaker said. It's like when you get this level of proximity, or you even see it happen to those around you or your family or your peer group, it impacts this level of trauma based off in proximity itself. Like, this could possibly be me, or this can happen to me any given second. And I just remember, like, remember the data points that we regurgitate ourselves on our own people now, young people, saying, you know, the likelihood of you going to jail is even greater than you going to college and things of that sort. And it doesn't help when we got to face these numbers in a system that is perpetuating and constantly trying to target us as a people, right? So when we put these numbers out that had been debunked, but we put them out as a way of trying to, as a scare straight tactic, or we thinking unconsciously, or they're going to be a sign of motivation. We are perpetrating trauma on ourselves, right? And it also gives society a way to say, like, this is the factual truth when it's not the truth at all. And the reality is like 3 out of 4, but this 1 out of 20. 3 out of 4 of us going to go and being caught and involved in the justice system before that level, the age of 18. But 1 out of 20 of us is wrongfully convicted. That makes you look at the numbers to say, look, before that, you were already projected. 1 out of 2 of us shouldn't have been involved or experienced some type of experience with the law enforcement itself. But the law enforcement went after us and have found a way to play on our ignorance or our socioeconomics, or the means of not knowing how to protect ourselves with law and the legal system that we have always been exploited. And I think that's the reality of it. And that's what on addition to the proximity, because we know someone that has experienced it, the uncomfortable part was seeing it and seeing how it happened to young people and parents not knowing how to protect them. And then you seeing the political propaganda that was used to reinforce this on a national scale, right? These young men did not ask to be martyrs.
No, not at all, bro. Not at all. Straight Iron Style said that Raymond was 16 at the time when he was, going through this whole dilemma, so he was 16 years old. So again, the maturity, it depends on his maturity. And Straight Iron, I appreciate you posting that. Depending on where his head is at, but 16 years old, you're still a child. You know what I mean? We look at age. We say, oh, you 16, you 18, you 21, you should be able to. I mean, think about where the young black boy and the young black man is at right now. I think a lot of young black men at this point now, Rashad, they don't know their manhood until 30. You know what I'm saying? Until 30 is the big number. Back in the day when I was growing up, it was 18 and 21. Now it's like 30. You know what I mean? And I think it speaks volumes about where we are. Very quickly before we take our next pause, Janelle, you checked in and said this is something very important. You said this criminal system is not structured to go back and audit itself for possible correction. Recent court filings that limit how those incarcerated can appeal, even if the prosecutor agrees. And that's the problem. Nas put it in one of his latest songs off his new album, King Disease 3, the correctional facilities don't know how to don't know how to do it correctly. And that's what it comes down to. And it's like a massive, gigantic, like Herculean task to try to fix this system that is built on injustice, especially when it comes to black men and boys and black girls and women.
Yep.
It's a Herculean task. So what we're seeing is just, it's compounded over years and years of injustice, so much to the point that it's almost, you just want to just say the hell with the whole system. Now, we could talk about reform. We could talk about making some changes, but you got to if you're going to talk about a fundamental change to the criminal justice system, the court system, and how it handles black men and boys and black girls and women, how to handle the livelihood and preservation of black bodies. I mean, we're at that point because it's just so much injustice that's piled up that it's almost like you get pulled up for a traffic stop. And I don't know if anybody else feel the same way, but I do. You get pulled up for a traffic stop or you got to go to traffic court. You don't know whether you're going to court for a ticket or you going to court to get pulled, to go to jail.
Exactly.
You be like, I'm just going to hit for this ticket. Next thing you know, you're like, damn, man, I don't know how I'm locked up in this situation. What just happened? Craziness. So a big shout out to those brothers, the Exonerated 5, for redefining their narrative. And I hope and pray if y'all go to New York City, if you're in New York City, show some love, stop by the monument and appreciate the fact that there is a space for social justice there in New York City. All right, we got to take another pause. When we come forward, let's talk about the Golden Globes, not just the award show. There was a limited Netflix series called Dahmer that ran. It was a controversial series about the killings that Jeffrey Dahmer, the cannibalist, did on black men. And so that series won some praise. The actors won some praise, but the families are unhappy. We're going to share with you that story. Stay with us. That discussion is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. I wanted to have a conversation about something that some folks have been talking about on social media, which is this discussion about the Jeffrey Dahmer limited Netflix series, Dahmer. Now, this series aired last year and has won some praise for its real-life depiction of the action and events that were very disturbing, to say the least. If you remember, Jeffrey Dahmer was the cannibalist and murderer, serial killer. He killed over 10 people. In the early 90s, he not only killed his victims, he's dismembered his victims, and even has gone as far as to consume his victims. And a lot of his victims were Black men. And so the Netflix series looked at some of the key cases that brought him to trial, and overall, how that situation played out, where eventually Dahmer was sentenced to prison, and he was eventually killed while in prison. Now, the actor that played Dahmer, that you can see his face right there, folks. The actor that played Dahmer, his name is Evan Peters, and he took on the role, and many people thought that he did a very, very convincing job of the situation. So much so, he was actually awarded a Golden Globe for his depiction of the cannibalist. Now, while accepting the award for Best Performance by an actor in a limited series and an anthology series or a motion picture made for television, he said this speech, and I want to post his words from his speech. Take a look at this, folks. In his speech, he said, "I want to thank my family, friends, and loved ones who helped pick me up when I fell and carried me to the finish line." He said, "Lastly, but most importantly, I want to thank everyone out there who watched the show. It was a difficult one to make, a difficult one to watch, but I sincerely hope some good came out of it." Now, Shirley Hughes, who is the mother of Tony Hughes, who was one of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims, she took exception with this speech, with Evan Peters winning and what she says was an out of touch speech. She posted, she told in a conversation with TMZ, she said this. She said Evan should have used his acceptance speech to mention the families who are still suffering from Dahmer's crimes, or to say Hollywood should put an end to telling stories about killers and glorifying them. She said there's a lot of sick people around the world, and people winning or acting roles from playing killers keeps the obsession going, and this makes sick people thrive on the fame. This is the article. And so, folks, I want to have a conversation about this. There are two things that I think that we can point out here. Do you agree with Ms. Hughes? Do you think that Evan Peters should have mentioned something, should have said something to the victims' families as part of his acceptance speech? And then the other part of this is that as an actor, he was hired to do this job. So should he feel some level of obligation or duty to want to take this, to take his role and to try to use it as a way to advocate for certain things, like for Ms. Hughes suggested that Hollywood should stop glorifying killers in their films? It's a lot of intersectionality, to get back to Rashad's word, intersectionality here. And I wanted to have this conversation with my brother Rashad, and I also wanted to bring in the host of Queen Talks with Nira podcast. She's also a screenwriter herself, and she is an author and an advocate. Nira, I want to bring you into the conversation. So welcome to having you as part of this discussion. How are you? Wait a minute, we got you on mute. There we go. Nope, we don't have you on mute. We can't hear you. Let me see what we can do. Let's try to get Nira's fixed. But Rashad, what's your take first on this situation?
Man, I agree with the mother, Miss Hughes, wholeheartedly. One, I think she recentered what should have been stated, what should have been claimed. But also, we got to address the caucasity, of which I say the caucasity of it, and the duality of how we allow certain to happen with others and then have a limited accountability with other persons on the other hue of the spectrum of our skin. One in particular, when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. And Will Smith finally did his apology speech, or did a speech in responding to it, everyone went up in uproar again, saying that he didn't deliberately apologize, right, or acknowledge his fault. But even in this space, it's not apples to oranges. But I remember when other actors take these roles of personifying someone else, even a historical figure and things of that sort. Even Will Smith, when he did the father of Venus and Serena, he acknowledged the family. When you do Ali, you acknowledge the family. When Denzel did X, he acknowledged the person and the family, right? All of those with Jamie did Ray Charles, you acknowledge the historical, the legacy, and the personification of that. For him to embody the ignorance and the gruesomeness of Dahmer, but not acknowledge the sickness of that man's mental health, the wrongdoing of the act of harming people, dismembering people, maiming them, and eating them. It speaks to us not addressing what others may have a sensationalization towards, right? He could have recentered that and refocused it on that and used that as a way of promoting ways to get resources, services that needs to be done, or dispelling that this thing is not right and it should not, like she said, it should not be entertained. Trauma should not be entertained and used for commercial gains. Right, and I think
it's Hollywood, though, bro. Like Hollywood. Hollywood has a history of using pain for profit.
Agreed.
You know what I'm saying? This is Hollywood. Like this is, and here's the other part about this, right? It's like the chicken versus the egg type of situation, right? You can say, okay, Hollywood is putting this out there, but guess what? The people. One of the top networks is the ID channel on cable, right? People love true crime. People love crime stories. We watch police stories, and we love, First 48. Like, these are like hit shows, not because people ain't watching them, but people, for some reason, this is part of our this is part of our culture. We love to see, even though it's gruesome,
I love it.
even though it's wild, we love it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you good.
Yay! Awesome. I'm using the iPhone now, so this is like my first time actually using it, and it just was not working.
Okay, Mira. Okay, you got an iPhone.
No, I'm just saying it wasn't working at first. I had to figure it out. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. What's your take on this? I mean,
I am
why
sorry.
did you get into the industry?
I completely disagree with the mom on this one. I think that the show was brilliant. I think that Evan Peters is a brilliant actor. If anyone watches American Horror Story, you know Evan Peters. Like,
all right, we look like we're going to get Nero right back. We're going to get Nero right back. But she makes her point. She's saying that from a and Rashad, from a Hollywood vantage point, it's those stories have to be told. I mean, I think, and guess what? I'm not necessarily upset about that.
Mm-hmm. I just think we didn't use the mantle and the platform. I think we didn't optimize the platform and the mantle that you had at that particular time. Right. And that's it. Right. At the end of the day, we still didn't itemize the way of bringing humanity back to raise awareness and things of that sort. And I'm race baiting because when it comes to our athletes, the things of that doing social movement, Black Lives Matter, we expect them to use their voice to speak up. But yet when it's others, we don't say that. And then we give them the refute to say, well, they were just doing their job in this professional sector, which is acting and within Hollywood, and that's Hollywood's thing. But again, in this society, when people need the help, when victims' families are still living, and to see someone get an award like that, it's like, can you be proud of it? I don't think I can be proud of someone.
You don't think you can be proud of it? All right, let me see if we can get Nero back into this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just completely disagree with this. Like, I think that I think for one, I've been obsessed with the Dahmer and the Ted Bundy. One, I just love that type of stuff. I'm really into World War documentaries. I'm into true crime documentaries. I love this stuff. Like, in general, I love the Ted Bundy films. I think that Zac Efron did an excellent job playing Ted Bundy. And I do understand that, yes, these are hard stories to tell, but there are a lot of hard stories that we tell every single day, stories that we watch every single day on TV. And they're brilliant actors who win awards for these roles. I mean, some people watch Abbott Elementary, and personally, as a teacher, I just can't, because when I'm at home, I don't want to watch pretend stories about kids, because I just don't feel like it. I'm at home. I don't want to be at school. So, I mean, that's just my preference. Everyone has a preference in what they like. And I don't think that Evan Peters went into this thinking like, oh, I want to be hurtful to the families. Or when he accepted that award, that he was like, oh, I don't give a shit about these families. I'm just going to go get this award. I genuinely don't believe that was the spirit in which he collected that award. I think that as an actor, as someone who, again, has taken on a role, you go up there and you say your acceptance speech. Some people write their speeches and others don't. Others just kind of wing it. And then afterward, they're like, oh shit, I didn't think this person. I didn't think that person. And you're like, you know what I mean? Like, if you've ever won an award, there's been times where you're like, oh shit, I wish I would have said this when I took that award. But in that moment, you didn't think of it. But again, I just don't feel like this was a situation where, please continue telling these stories. These are stories that affect culture. They affect, Jeffrey Dahmer is not the only serial killer who's had a movie made about him.
Right.
I watch war crimes. I watch all types of different documentaries about different things. So I think that to be like, oh, this one particular story shouldn't be told, I think that's a little far-fetched. And I think that's a little bit unfair of her to put that on him, to be like, you shouldn't have won this award, because people, I just think that's weird.
I don't know if it's, and we got about 30 seconds. I don't know if it's like you should have won this award as much as you should have acknowledged the victims, because and I don't know.
No, I mean, to say that we shouldn't make these types of movies, that he should have used that platform to say we shouldn't make these types of shows or movies. Like, that's not why. Why should we not? These are stories that affect our culture. These are our stories. And whether they're good or bad, they're our stories. When you see movies about enslaved people, those are not easy to watch, but they're our stories. Have you watched Serafina? Have you ever watched Rosewood? Were those easy to watch? Hell no.
Yeah. 12 Years a Slave being one of them was a hard one for me to watch. And so many, and to Neera's point, I mean, I think that's the point. Like, you know, there is always that thin line, and we're going to take a quick pause, but there's always that thin line between trying to figure out what story you're going to put out there for the masses to consume and what stories you're not going to, you know, emphasize and highlight. And I think that's always the tough decision that if you're talking about Hollywood is always conflicted with. You know, it's like the story of Emmett Till. We just saw Till coming out this past year, and how much of that story do you want to tell? What part of that story do you want to tell? You know what I mean? Like there are those hard moments. Like we can't run away from this. We can't run away from the ugliness of this country's history, the ugliness of certain cases on the culture. On our culture. I'm totally in the wholehearted agreement with this. Rashad, we got to take a quick pause. I want to get your response to that. And of course, I want to get hear from our online culture crew. Folks, what y'all think? Do you agree with the mother on this? We got a poll running right now on our YouTube chat, on our YouTube as we're streaming there live. So make sure y'all vote in on the poll. We're asking, do you agree with Dahmer's victim's mother, Miss Hughes, to say that, look, he should have said something. He should advocate that Hollywood doesn't glorify these type of killers. What do you think? Yes or no? Take the poll, share your comment, and then we'll continue the discussion on the other side. You're tuned into The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people. The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been having a conversation talking about Dahmer, the Netflix limited series, which highlights some of the killings and the court proceedings of Jeffrey Dahmer. This is the cannibalist murderer who killed more than 10 people when he was alive back in the early 90s, 1991, and back in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. National story. He is one of the most horrendous. His case is one of the most horrendous cases in American history. And so the mother of one of the victims is outraged at the fact that the actor who played Jeffrey Dahmer did not take the time out on Sunday to acknowledge the victims for the pain that Dahmer has caused their families. That the actor Evan Peters only acknowledged the fact of his family and his cast and just getting through, but he did not take time to acknowledge the victims. And his mother, Miss Hughes, says, "Look, what about us? What about those who are still living with the pain of what this man has done? Shouldn't we be acknowledged?" We got Culture Crew members Rashad, Nira, that's checking in, and it seems like based on the chat that I'm reading right now, Nira and Rashad. It's a little split. Some people are agreeing with you, Rashad, and some folks are agreeing with you, Nira, around this, that yes, these stories need to be told. To your point, Nira, you said these stories need to be told. We already know that there's a huge audience for true crime, the true crime genre. But this is a part of American history. This is something that needs to be discussed. But I think that people want to have a different telling of the story. And is that too much to ask? To have actors, to have filmmakers, to try to put a little spin on the story to emphasize the pain and not just the gruesome element. And I don't think this story necessarily did. I think they were trying to do more like like a retelling, not necessarily have a slant or any particular side, but should we have content that emphasizes, hey, this is a victim story versus this is a perpetrator story?
Oh, I'm like, who was going? I mean, personally, I just didn't, to be honest, I didn't think about it at all when the show came out. I didn't honestly think about the victims' families, and maybe that means I'm a little insensitive. I don't know. I hope I'm not. I don't try to be insensitive. But I have always been obsessed with the Dahmer story, and I've always been obsessed with the Ted Bundy story, like I mentioned earlier. And then I know Evan Peters to be just a phenomenal actor. So when it came out, I was just more so interested in the story, and I didn't even think about the victims' families. So I do apologize for that. But again, I don't believe that Evan Peters owes the family an apology for Jeffrey Dahmer's actions. He in no way, shape, form, or fashion owes anyone an apology. Like he didn't do anything. He acted and he did a phenomenal job doing the role, but I don't feel like he owes them an apology. He didn't do anything. So that's just my take on it.
I got you. All right, let me get some more comments, and then Rashad, I know you got some final comments on this as well. Willie Frazier checked in and said, governance versus social structure. What do gay black men mean to the actor? He expressed what he felt in his heart. At the same time, he didn't kill anyone personally. How much are we going to expect? That's a good point, Willie. You know, how much should we expect from an actor who's given a script and paid to do a job? Do we want the actor to become an activist or an advocate? And you know, Rashad, I think that's probably that is the underlying expectation, because we're seeing Hollywood change. We're seeing actors becoming more vocal about social ills, that there is now this expectation that not only should you act, but then you should also say something about, you know, whatever project you're acting in, especially if that project is highly controversial as this film has been. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think our access to Hollywood and being actresses and actors has always taken a different approach. From the Paul Robesons to the others have always been intentional of what their representation means for the collective versus the individual self. So we often come in it with that mindset versus others that have not been corralled or been obligated to do that. So I think One in itself from the initial question was, I think the angle of the show, I watched it. I didn't find it entertaining, but I found it informative. For I was too young to even know about Jeffrey Dahmer, what's been done. But once I've heard and I started to do my research, the atrocities and everything else was uncomfortable to swallow as a reality. But I think all in all, missed opportunity to reinforce some level of empathy for the family and just to acknowledge that it's still some people that are living that will be affected or re-traumatized by the fact that this has become a production for everybody to watch and to lean on to. But yeah, I think again, entertainment comes with some level of insensitivity because we're not looking at the larger picture. But I think he could have did more. He didn't do more. I wouldn't hold it against him as an actor. But I think it's a level of just empathy to take that moment in. And like Nira said, it's been plenty of times when we all received awards and got the award and stepped back and said, man, I could have said more on the mic. That may be his moment. Yep.
Absolutely. All right, Danita Jackson, you checked it and said it is also my personal belief that when these movies are created, that part of the proceeds should go to the victims or funding to help combat these atrocities. Nira, what's your take on that?
I actually think that would be really awesome if they did something like that. Personally, I believe that it would be more the responsibility of the creators of the show and the writers of the show to, reach out to the families versus the actors, just because they're the ones who wrote it. And I think that when you're the actual writer, I think you're the one telling the story. You're not just the one that's portraying it, but you're the one who did the research. You're the one who crafted this story for everyone to see. And so I think that if anything, as a family, I would have expected more from that side of production than the actor's side of the production. But that's
right. And some people are bringing that point up there, that saying that the mom should have probably been a part of the. I think Sandy, you brought that up in your comments. You said that the mom should have probably been a part of the film's research team. What
was the movie we watched, Farajii, about Fred Hammond? I mean, that was his
Judas
son,
right?
Judas they were a part of that process, and for them even saying this was hard to watch because Lakeith did such a phenomenal job in that role. But again, these are stories that need to be told. Right. I think that it's important to tell our stories, and I just think that it's again, attacking a thespian, you know what I mean? It's just a little bit odd for me because again, if you followed him as an actor, you would know that these are the types of roles that he takes. If you watch American Horror Story, I'm not sure if Farajii or you or Rashad have ever watched American Horror Story, but it's an extremely graphic show. I mean, it's extremely dark stuff where he's even said that he's had to do therapy after some seasons and even take a break from the show because it's such a dark show. So I think that, when you look at the full picture, then it's kind of like, okay, maybe this is a little bit too harsh on the actor himself because he's just so used to taking these dark roles that it's like second nature. It's become like second nature for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Rashad, I know you got to hop off. I truly appreciate you for your insight and your brilliance, brother. And God willing, we'll look forward to reconnecting with you. Hopefully sometime next week, bro, if you ain't non-profiting.
Yeah, man, non-profiting means that you got to find profit for some way, somehow. I think it's irony in the language not making sense. But always a pleasure, man. Always for the pleasure.
Appreciate you, brother. That's a great point there. But
please.
You know what? We're going to have to see. Appreciate you, Rashad. But we're going to have to see if this conversation takes steam, especially with other folks. I think that you make a solid point. This is not pretty, but this is the story. And if the production team had a level of social consciousness, they probably would have reached out to the families and done something special. But if they're just telling the story, can we really blame them for being Hollywood? I mean, I get what
and I think that in some ways, just the retelling of the story to me honors the victims because they're not being forgotten. Every time that story is told, I think that in some way, every victim is being honored because your story, your name, it's gonna live on. And yeah, that's not no one wants to be. Dr. King didn't say I want to be shot and killed and then be remembered, you know what I'm saying? Like for this so small frame of my life. But I do think that it is important for us to constantly remember that there were people who lost their lives, that there were people who, whether watching any type of war story or Holocaust or anything, there were people who do deserve to be remembered, and their story does deserve to be told.
Absolutely, absolutely. In our poll, do you agree with Dahmer's victims' mothers? 59% said yes, and 41% said no. They do not agree with Ms. Hughes. Very, very interesting feedback. All right, folks, we got to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's talk about National Quitters Day. Did you know today is National Quitters Day? This is the day when most people start to fall off the bandwagon of their resolution. We're going to check in with Online Culture crew member Corinna Denise and Nira to get their take on what do they do to stay motivated, especially at this point in the new year. So stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Did you know today is a very special day in the new year? It's actually a day that probably many of us start to feel like this New Year resolution thing may not happen the way we planned it. Today is officially what they call National Quitters Day. This is the day where, according to recent studies, it shows that most people start to fall off the bandwagon. Take a look, folks. Now, this is, I want to share with you some information from a website called National Today. This is a website that talks about when there are major national holidays or national acknowledgments. But according to National Today, Quitters Day is held on the second Friday in January. This year it falls on January 13th. So today is also Friday the 13th, folks. Dun, dun, dun. The tradition of setting New Year's resolutions began some 4,000 years ago with the ancient Babylonians. For them, the year did not begin in January, but in mid-March on the first moon after the spring equinox. Now, Quitters Day is set aside to recognize those who have set New Year's goals and failed to achieve them, and to encourage and equip them to try again and ultimately succeed. Research has shown that people quit their resolution for the year by the second Friday of January. Damn. New studies have found that about 2/3 of people abandon their New Year's resolution within a month. One of the major problems with achieving New Year's resolutions is that those who set them are overambitious. People usually start with high levels of motivation, but as time progresses, the drive begins to wane. Now, the key in achieving goals is to set short, medium, and long-term goals as opposed to one large, unrealistic stretch goal. Starting small and staying consistent and also pairing up with someone else to remain accountable and motivated will lead to good results. Today is National Quitters Day. Let me bring in my culture crew. We got Nira Muhammad still in the chat with us. She's the host of Queen Talks with Nira podcast. She's also a screenwriter. She's also an activist. And she's a motivator. She is a motivator. Let's bring her back into the frame. Also, we're joined by Online Culture crew member Corinna Denise. Corinna is an educator. Hey, Corinna, how you feeling?
Hey, happy Friday, Farajii. Hey, Nara, my Virgo sis.
All right. First and foremost, all right, Nara, I'm gonna start this with you. National Quitters Day.
Funny. I find it hilarious.
National Quitters Day. Did you even know about this? Have you ever heard of this?
No, I've never heard of it before, but I definitely do believe that most people do quit their resolutions like hella early on. So yeah, I can see why.
We're only literally 2 weeks into the new year, and people are like, bump this.
You know what's so funny?
I'm eating it.
I don't make resolutions like I used to anymore. Right. It's more like a theme. I give myself more like a theme for the year. Like this year, I want to be more intentional. That's so fucking like a big ass umbrella that I will always feel like I'm being intentional. Oh, I got up and I folded some laundry today. I was intentional about cleaning my house. I did my hair today. I was intentional about making sure I look good. You know what I mean? You have to set stuff that's like really gonna make you feel good. And then, I'm really big on journaling. Or like having a calendar. So I made sure I got a calendar. This particular calendar I love because it's like where focus goes, energy flows. You set your goal. You set 3 steps to attain those goals. And then it says a goal without a plan is a wish. So I like it when you are able to set one goal and then you're able to break it down into steps so that you're not like driving yourself crazy when you don't meet that goal, but you can actually like give yourself a pat on the back every time you can check off that one box. Like, oh, I did step 1, I can check that off. I did step 2, I can check that off. And so your big goal should not be something that you can complete in January anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like you shouldn't have something that's like once January comes, it's done. It should be an ongoing thing. So yeah, I definitely think that people should like not go be so hard on themselves with the whole resolutions thing, but make it something small, like a low-hanging fruit that you can actually like bite into as you go.
Look at you putting the words together all cleverly. Low-hanging fruit that you can bite into in 6 months. Just take little nibbles of your goals, and then over the 6 months. Corinna, what's your take on this? National Quitters Day. How do you stay motivated?
Well, first of all, thank you for enlightening me because I had no idea this day existed. I'm like, Quitters Day? Like, see, this is exactly why I don't even make any damn resolutions. There's no point. So I agree with Nara. I think, small attainable goals, right? Things that are realistic for you, because it's easy to become, or should I say, not motivated anymore, right? So small attainable goals, usually people start off on a big high and then they see after a week or so they're dropping off. Life happens as it always does. And then we're not meeting our goals. So small attainable goals, I think the key is like consistency.
Yeah.
So I'm not, going to put the pressure on myself to say, oh, it's a new year. Let me set all these goals for myself when there's an entire year. Where you can maybe set a handful of small attainable goals each month or whatever works for you. I think that's going to look different for everyone, whether it's a week or a month, or maybe in a 3-month mark, I want to be here, there, or, I want to travel to this place. I plan to be in a better position financially. I plan to have this or that. So it's easy to fall off being motivated, but I think when you put so much pressure on yourself to have all of these astronomical goals, it's like there's no room to give yourself grace when you might have a day where you kind of like fall off, because the reality is that's going to happen. Nothing's going to be perfect, especially like with weight loss goals and exercise. Like, let me tell you something. Like,
say that.
Like, top of 2020, I was sexy slim. Okay, I was in the gym, chefing it up in the kitchen. You know, I was still in Brooklyn at the time, so I could walk right around the corner to Crunch Gym. And then guess what? The city shut down and wrecked my whole flow. And so then I'm isolated in the pandemic. So after a while, even though I was trying to do my boxing and stuff in my apartment, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to eat this damn ice cream.
Okay.
Because this is what's going to make me feel better right now. So I'm kind of in a space now, just to give you guys an example. Like, I know what I have to do. So like, I started my weight loss and fitness journey again. So I'm kind of more approaching it as, how am I going to feel? Right.
That's right.
And I think the consistency, like, that's what really adds up. So, you know, I think if we focus on actually attaining something small at a time, and then we actually see results, we won't be so quick to give up on something.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that speaks volumes about how we're seeing this whole thing, because, and I'm thinking, you know, I would have to agree with both of you. I just think that for individual, we put so much on ourselves. And I think our culture, you know, our culture really doesn't give, you say, Corinna, give ourselves grace. Nira, I don't think our culture really give anybody any grace. Like everything is so fast. Like, you know, by the time you're 16, you should be here. By the time you're 18 here. By the time you're 21, you should be owning a company. By the time you're 25, you should be a millionaire. You know, and it's like the time and the culture that we live in, it doesn't give space for us to live, fail, and live again.
Yeah. I think also social media has magnified that.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Now,
and I was
you know,
joking
you
about
have
the 25-year-old millionaires. That sounds like I blame you too.
Yeah, like
25-year-old millionaires. Like, how the hell are you a millionaire at 6 years old? Fucking Ryan.
Right,
you know what I mean? But I agree, Karina. It's like, it's social media. It's everything being heightened. It's like, you think that people are living this glamorous life, but then I found this article that was talking about how so many influencers are like in debt because they buy all these clothes that they really can't afford. And you're thinking that they're getting all this stuff, you know, for free. And they're literally like maxing out their credit cards just to post these videos on Instagram. And I'm like, that's insane. You know what I mean? It's like you're literally paying and going into debt for views.
Right. Yeah. And there's the human side of this as well. You know, and from this piece from nationaltoday.com, they put it out there that it generally takes 14 days to start a new habit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was always taught that it takes 21 days to break an old habit, and it takes, of course, the equal amount of time to start a new habit. And then, so let's talk a little bit about that in terms of starting new habits. Like for Nira, for you, you know, you're growing, you're evolving, you're in a different space. But what was the starting point? What was the origin of you starting a new habit? Because you say you love journaling. Well, was there ever a time in journaling where you just stopped journaling and then you picked back up? How did that work for you?
Well, I actually didn't really even start getting into journaling until I went to therapy. It was something that my therapist has suggested. And it's one of those things that I do find myself like falling off of sometimes. Like I go through these phases of, you know, getting so busy that I don't journal. And that's why I try to make sure that when I do buy a journal, or a calendar rather, that I buy something that really speaks to my personality. I know last year I used a habit journal. It was actually a journal. I mean, a habit to hold myself accountable. It was like an accountability journal. And it was like, you know, and it talked about my mood, and I was able to talk about how I was feeling, or ask myself questions like, who do I need to apologize to? The journal the calendar that I have this year has coloring pages. It has gratitude lists. It has art of Black women. So I
want you to show it.
Oh, okay. You want to show it?
Yeah. The cover. Show the cover though. The cover though.
Oh, organized.
I bought this from Malik Books, a Black-owned bookstore. So this is a Black artist, and there's coloring pages in there. There are word searches. Here's just like a little bit of what's inside of there. And so I bought this. I spent $20 on it too. So I was like, you know what? I spent $20 on it. I'm gonna make sure that I use it. But yeah, buy something that speaks to your personality. If you're interested in money this year, there are calendars that you can get that will help you track your bills, help you track your money, your spending, your savings, and really get a good picture of, what you're trying to do. If you're trying to become more active, there are journals for that as well. There are journals where you can track what you ate for the day. You can track how much time you spent at the gym. And real quick on the gym thing, because that actually is like the number one New Year's resolution that most people have. My personal, and I've gone through a lot of weight issues, but my personal suggestion would be not to just get like a gym membership and say my New Year's resolution is to go to the gym more. I would change that language to my New Year's resolution is to become more active. And that way, if you decide not to go to the gym that day, maybe you have, on your calendar, if you don't go to the gym, you have to do 20 squats on this day. On this day, if you don't go to the gym, you have to do walk around the block 3 times. You can set different things that maybe if you don't have the time to go to the gym, you can do 100 jumping jacks in your living room really quickly. You know what I'm saying? So you can find different ways to accommodate so that you're not feeling shitty like, oh my gosh, I didn't go to the gym, but you'll be like, you know what? But I did do those squats. So, just trying to find different ways to fill in those gaps for yourself so that you're not like, oh my God, I didn't accomplish anything at all.
So you're kind of giving yourself a consequence in case you don't necessarily follow through.
Because you know what? Hey, Corinna, that never worked. That never helped. Like, why the hell are you beating yourself up so much?
But that's not a consequence. Well, I think, it could be a consequence.
It's a consequence, Mira. It's a consequence.
If I don't make, but I'm saying but that's the thing. It's called discipline. That's something that you said you wanted to do for the year.
Because I'm trying to look. Because
so
I'm trying to keep up with social media.
I'm a Virgo too, so I don't look at the consequence. I look at it as me holding myself accountable. If I said that I was going to do X, Y, Z, all right, I didn't do that, but at least I can do this instead.
But here's the upside, I think.
All right, hold on. Wait, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, Corinna, I want to get your take on that. Nira, I want to get a word about that because you don't understand my obsession with social media and trying to look like these black men on social media. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to have long locks and a flowing beard.
It's coming along.
All right. We got to get more to it. Folks, National Quitters Day. Today is the day. Share your comments in the chat as we talk about this. And stay tuned. More conversation up next here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back. We've been talking about today is officially National Quitters Day. This is the day where most people fall off the bandwagon with their New Year's resolutions. Yeah, folks, 13 days into the new year, and we're already talking about quitting. Yep. But I got two dynamic women with me here on the panel they don't even know what the word quit means. So I'll just add them on. They don't quit at nothing. They don't quit at nothing. They go hard every time. Nira Muhammad, host of Screen Talk with Nira, screenwriter, activist. We got Corinna Denise, online culture crew member. She's also an educator and activist as well. Ladies, why are y'all laughing? Y'all don't know nothing about no quitting.
I quit jobs all the time, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's real. I mean,
let me make that. That's why I had to make this clear. National Quitters Day does not mean to quit your job and lose your source of income. No.
I think there may be some correlation though with that mass resignation we saw.
There might be. This is just for your resolution. Don't quit your job. Just quit yourself.
Don't just quit yourself.
But what I wanted to add on to what Nara was saying earlier when we were talking about the consequences, I think the upside is eventually once you start building that consistency and seeing results, you want to do it. Like I know for me, especially when I was going to the gym, like let me be very clear, I hate working out, but I love the results.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a, it was kind of like a high, like you crave it.
I know athletes who hate working out.
Yeah.
I don't know who, because see, working out is actually you really got to get into a different mindset. Like because you're putting yourself in pain voluntarily.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's why people don't work out. That's why people don't exercise because
that's
it's like
I don't work out.
Huh?
I don't not work out because I don't want to be in pain. I just don't like working out.
Right. You don't like being active.
I do like being active, not in. Okay, let me be clear here. I don't like going to the gym. I love hiking. I love bouldering, but I don't like gym and all the fancy dancy equipment and all that stuff.
Right. I understand that. Here's what our online culture crew is talking about, and I blame Real Brooklyn for this conversation, talking about fried chicken and Popeyes. And how the people love Popeyes and fried chicken. Real Brooklyn, I'm coming at you, sir. You started
that chicken sandwich.
He said, I started my New Year's resolution to stop eating Popeyes. That went out the window last week. Damn.
Now, you know what? To add to that, Real Brooklyn, I will say, like, some habits, even though, like, obviously, I did gain the weight back, some things have changed since I was on that fitness kick, but some of the habits have really stuck with me. Like, I haven't had soda in, like, years. I don't really eat fried foods, fast food. You know, I personally think fast food hasn't been good since I was growing up in the 90s when the burger actually looked how it did on the commercial. But that's just my view. But I mean, there's some things that have stuck with me. And I think it's just weaning yourself off, right? It's just like, for example, if you drink soda all the time or like caffeine or coffee and you suddenly quit, you're going to have a major headache because your body is so used to the headache. So it's kind of like just cutting it out a little bit at a time and weaning yourself off. And then eventually you're going to see that you don't even have a craving for it anymore. And I think that's back to your point, Farajii. I think before we went to break, you mentioned about it takes like 21 days to break a habit. So it's just like consistency. But again, like we can't put that enormous pressure on ourselves to suddenly quit something. Like it's an unrealistic goal. It's an unattainable goal. And you're going to feel like shit when you don't reach the goal. So it's like, be gentle with yourself. Like it's attainable, but just a little bit at a time.
And don't use it as an excuse to eat Popeyes for the rest of the year. Like, okay, you had your little slip up. Maybe make it a treat for yourself, like every 2 months or something, or every quarter. You know what I mean? Whatever. I don't know. You love Popeyes. I used to love Popeyes, but now I have a gluten allergy. I digress. Just don't think that because you slipped up this one time, that means that like now, well, after that resolution, I'm just keep at it. Like, no, you have literally 11 and a half months to go, buddy.
Hey, well tell that to Real Brooklyn, who said active can mean walking to Popeyes. Just saying. Real Brooklyn, bro. Really, sir. Really.
I love your relationship with Real Brooklyn. I really do.
Yeah, walk past it, though. Walk past it.
It's funny as hell. He
just
said,
inhale the fumes and keep it moving.
He said, if Popeyes is more than a mile, then you good. Activity accomplished.
You gotta get some willpower.
I'm going to walk for these biscuits.
And choke on the way home.
I mean, you can have things in moderation. It's not like you have to completely, give up everything. It's just learning to eat in moderation, right? Like every once in a while, you have a treat.
Exactly.
So here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. This is one of the things that I've learned about goal setting. You have to be very clear about your motivation. Like, what is your intention, right? Because here's the thing. Like, I used to, when I was younger, I'd be like, oh, I want to work out because I'm trying to look like this. But then now, as I got older, I was like, no, I enjoy working out. It could be running. It could be walking. It could be going to the gym. It could be hiking, just because I want to stay healthy. Like, I'm not trying to look like I walked out of a magazine. And I think that is the part about social media that has damaged a lot of people, especially for Black men. Like, as a Black man, as a young Black man, you see these brothers on social media, and you're like, damn, bro, like, what are you trying to do? Like, they coming out and they do these little dances and stuff, and they got they got their shirts off, or they in the kitchen like, yeah, so this is what I eat. And it's like, bro, come on, bro.
Social media throws so many unrealistic expectations to us. Like, all
think
these
about
goals
the way that women's bodies are shaped now. Like, come on. Like, your waist should not even be that small with your behind being that big. Like, your waist should not be like this. And then your ass is like this. It doesn't even look like, why would I want my waist to be like this and my ass to be like this? It's like,
and that's what I'm saying. Like,
and not even like a Coke bottle, because I feel like a Coke bottle is pretty proportioned. It's like that.
Yeah. No,
10, it's like whatever. It used to be like a 10-inch difference from your waist to your hips. That was the ratio. It was like considered beautiful, perfect body. It's like 10-10. Now it's like 5 and it's like 30. You know what I mean? It's like this big ass difference between the size of a woman's waist compared to her buttocks. And I'm like, that's not realistic. And we as women should not be striving to look like these Instagram models, because it's unrealistic. And we should not even all look the same,
Right. And I mean, look, this is about the year. And I think, nearer to your point as we wrap up, this is something that you mentioned, and I think this is huge. We're talking about making goals for the year. And I wanted to get both of your sisters' take on this. Like, there's a way that you have your short-term goals and then you have your long-term goals. And so when we're talking about the short-term goals, when we're talking about, say, those goals over 30 days versus the long-term goal could be, I want to buy a house, or I want to get a new car.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Or I'm moving to a different city and I want to, add to my savings or something. But the short-term goal could be the personal stuff. So for you there, very quickly, how do you, differentiate, or how do you determine what's the short term, what's the long term?
I think that when you look at a long-term goal, that's the one that you're going to have those baby steps. That's where the long-term goal is the umbrella. Everything underneath of that. For instance, if you say that you want to buy a house, there are different things that you're going to need to look at. Now you have to look at your credit. So maybe in January, it's going to be, this month, I'm going to pull my credit report. Mm-hmm. And go over, highlight any expenses that, I can start, eliminating. February may be maybe 1 month you spent too much at Starbucks. So February's goal is cut back on your spending at Starbucks. You know what I mean? You can set, it depends on what your umbrella looks like, but there's always steps that you could take. Out of every paycheck, I want to put 10%. That could be something, a goal that you set in March, whenever you do that. But again, your large goal is going to be that thing, that pinnacle, that prize. Think of it as like your big prize. What steps do you have to take to get to the prize. You know what I mean? If you're playing a board game, there's a bunch of little steps that you have to take in Candyland before you get to that end. What's gonna be on each one of those little steps? That's what I think of. One big goal, a bunch of steps to make it to that goal.
Absolutely. Corinna, what about you? Short-term and long-term goals?
Yeah, again, I agree with Nara. You know, and I think it's very important, like mapping it all out, right? Like Nara showed us her planner, and like she's demonstrating a way of how she keeps herself accountable. And I think that's going to look different for all of us, right? Like some folks like to use their phone. I'm still like kind of old fashioned where I like to write things down because it helps me to retain the information better than having to like, you know, go and look online for it. So yeah, I think if it's a long-term goal, then you really want to map it out, right? Like what are the steps to getting and attaining this goal? And maybe again, back to the small goals within that larger goal, you want to map it out to say, okay, well, I want to be here in 3 months. And maybe for some, you need to actually map that out. Like, okay, not just 3 months, but by mid-August 2023, I plan to have these things or plan to do these things or whatever the case may be. So, you know, it's going to look different for everyone. But I think, again, like making small steps to that larger goal, it helps to build up your momentum, maintain consistency. And so you won't waver and you won't feel like a quitter and be like, oh my God, it's National Quitters Day and I didn't make it. Like, you know,
Right. And you talked about accountability, and I think the big thing for accountability is surrounding yourself with people who support you in your goals. Yes, that's how you stay accountable. You got to surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you, even check you.
Yeah.
Even check you when you don't make. Now I know that's hard for Virgos, Nera. I know that's hard because you like, look.
You think you humble pie and just swallow the criticism.
You know, and I think that's just because I'm always so hard on myself, like constantly, like, why am I tired? Why am I resting? So that's actually something I want to work on. Like, I want to actually stop beating myself up for being tired.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a shitty mom, and why am I not doing this? I'm like, wait a minute, no, you're a great mom. Like, it's okay to be tired. It's okay to rest. It's okay to take a day for yourself and just watch TV, like whatever. So that's my thing. I don't want to go beyond 10 all the time. And I think for me, that's one thing I learned from COVID and that time that we were all kind of forced to be at home is that, you know what? I can slow down a little bit.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes avoiding things too, like avoiding and ignoring it and acting like it's not there. Like sometimes we need to sit in our feelings and actually feel those emotions, because that's the only way for us to really get over it. I know that's something I really learned during my time being isolated in the pandemic, because I had to deal with emotional things that I thought I got past, but I never dealt with them. I kind of just put them away in a drawer. And then when I had time to really sit and think, that's when everything came back, right? But now I've actually moved through that. And like the biggest lesson was, you know, again, like actually sit, like Nara said, like if you feel tired, just sit and be tired. Like sometimes your body is actually signaling you like you need to take a break. You need to rest and regroup.
Absolutely. And this feels like therapy, so I'm gonna need to stop this conversation. I'm about to just express myself a little bit too much for the show. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come back, let's talk about Dr. King, and I got something for you for Trends, Posts, and Doing the Most. Stay with us. It's The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
go. All right, folks. Let me just talk about Dr. King because this is his weekend. Let's bring Nira and Corinna back into the frame, please, Keenan. Thank you, sir. Let's talk about Dr. King very quickly because this is his weekend. We're going to be celebrating Dr. King all over across this country. There are going to be numerous activities starting as early as today, leading all the way up to Monday, of course, with the national observation of Dr. King Day. And I found this piece happening. I found this piece. There's an article about a new sculpture called Embrace. Take a look at this, folks. Take a look at this picture of the King. Let me know if we can get the picture of this sculpture called Embrace. It was designed. It's a 20-foot. Look at this. Look at how beautiful this is. Nira, I think you can appreciate this. It's titled in sculpture, Embrace, excuse me. The 20-foot tall sculpture was designed by an artist by the name of Hank Willis Thomas in collaboration with Mass Design Group and stands in the new 1965 Freedom Rally Memorial Plaza, which is named as an homage to Dr. King's aforementioned speech at the Common. The site is a historically loaded one. It neighbors the Crispus Attucks Monument, dedicated to the Black man who was the first American killed in the American Revolution during the Boston Massacre, as well as the memorial to Boston abolitionist Robert Gould Shaw and the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, one of the first Black regiments to fight in the Civil War. The Boston Common, the oldest public park in the U.S., remains a locale where people gather for protests and rallies. And now this new sculpture has been installed there. The Embrace. Look at this. Honoring the mission of Dr. King. Nira, have you ever seen anything like this? This is phenomenal.
No, I actually really want to see it from a different angle because I want to see what it really looks like. It's beautiful, but I can't get the full scope.
You got to get that. I get you.
So
I get you.
I'm going to look at that when we get off here.
Yeah, that's dope right there. Corinna, what's your take of the sculpture, The Embrace?
It's really beautiful. I really like that the artist captured, like, I think just that affectionate part, like the embrace the purpose. And I was reading an article how it kind of enables us to kind of relate to just that type of feeling and affection. Yeah. And he was very intentional with not including like the faces of Dr. King or Mrs. King, so that I guess everyone could relate to like that affection, that embrace, like everyone could kind of just have some sort of correlation with it. But yeah, I've never seen anything like it before either. It's really cool.
Absolutely. It goes back to that first conversation that we had on the show today, talking about monuments and sculptures and structures. And I wonder, Nira, from your vantage point, you're an artist. How significant is it for us to memorialize these sentiments, these feelings in a physical structure?
It's very important, especially when we think about the significance that so many statues and just the beauty of sculptures in history over time. These are things that we find when civilizations have been destroyed. We have found sculptures that we have used to understand people and culture and religion. And so I believe that in so many ways, sculptures are timeless. They can be timeless. And so to have our stories etched into the soil in such a beautiful, such a large scale way, I think it's very important, because sculptures are what people travel all over the world to see. Sculptures enlighten and they teach. And so I think that it's very important that our Black stories are told, because we've just made just as much impact. And, we know the sculptures are impactful and they can be used for so many different things, because we've seen sculptures need to be removed from, men who have owned slaves, how the impact that was, and seeing those sculptures and those statues being removed and the impact that had on Black people. And so I think that to have a sculpture on such a large scale installed here and now for us, it's a beautiful thing. I love it.
Absolutely. There it is. Like look at it. Wow.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Even the detail with his like wedding ring, like
so beautiful.
Wow. And it's huge.
Yeah.
It's like physically large. Like this thing is huge.
I mean, that's Black love.
And that's Black love, the embrace.
It would be great if we could see like an aerial shot. I wonder if there's like a website or something for the
a 3D thing.
Like a 3D, like where you can kind of pan around and really see it fully. But I'm sure it'd be great to see in person.
So this is why I think artists are so important for the culture. because to your point, Nira, like being able to, truly like capture the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
To remind us of certain things, like when you're talking about like Black love, when you're talking about being in solidarity with someone, when you're talking about having an alliance with groups of people. I mean, this is the stuff, and I know that the space is often used for protests and rallies, but I would not want a space of. I don't think this particular space should be for one about negativity. I would rather have a prayer service there in that space, because the sculpture itself is calling for us to be at peace, not to be antagonistic. Am I wrong in thinking that, Corinna?
No, I don't think so at all. And I think especially a sculpture would provide such a great it's a conversation piece, right? I think especially for like a lot of visual learners. And then imagine for like young children, we need to continue to teach our history to our kids, right? Imagine how they're going to equate that, knowing the history and then seeing the piece. It's almost like they're seeing something visual and kind of putting it together.
Yeah.
Because to see like what a power couple, Dr. King and Mrs. King were. Like, she was a woman who really walked beside her husband every step of the way. And I think this sculpture, it pretty much
it
captures.
This is why we love Kenan. This is why Kenan is so great.
There we go.
Look at this, y'all.
Yeah.
Damn. Kenan, you are the king, sir. Thank you. Look at this. The embraces that has unveiled. And you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I never, like, Nira and I have talked about this. Coretta Scott King never remarried.
No.
She never remarried. She carried on the torch of her husband's mission to the day that she died. And that's why she will always be remembered in history. I don't care whoever writes the history books. God remembers her. You know what I'm saying? Mother Coretta Scott King will always be remembered. And she was such a beautiful woman. I mean, physically she was beautiful. But I mean, spiritually, she was like, and I think a lot of women tend to look at, and this is a much longer conversation, so we don't have time today, but a lot of women look at a woman in the role that Coretta Scott King played. But if you read the writings of Dr. King, he said his wife played such an integral role in getting him, not just allowing him to go out there and do the speeches and all of that stuff, but she was organizing behind the scenes. Yeah. She was the engine. He was the face, but she was really the engine. But she played in such a role that she understood her role in the movement, and she just allowed her husband to be who he is. But you can never have a Dr. King without a Mother Coretta Scott King.
No, absolutely not. And Black women, we are the engine.
Of course, you're the engine and the carburetor, the alternator.
But I think, Farajii, speaking to what you mentioned about like having protests in that space, I don't think that protests should not happen in that space. I think that you and I have had the opportunity to be a part of a lot of beautiful protests where there was a lot of love in those spaces. And so when I think about that embracing, I think of it in terms of Black women and Black men, but I also think of it just as a family, just as us when we're in those moments of protest. I remember being at Morgan State University and all of us students literally locking arms in the middle of the street and just that embracing of one another in those moments, or walking through the streets holding hands. Our protests are peaceful because we are a peaceful people. We saw that with the insurrection. Black people would never. And so even when you do see us acting other than, it always comes from a place of love and also a place of sometimes even fear. But I think that when you have that statue just in that space, I think that it'll bring a sense of calm over the people that maybe once was not there. And so I think that it was called upon for that statue to be in that space and called Embrace for a reason, because that is a space where Black people come together.
I agree.
And embrace each other in their pain and in their joy. So
I agree. I definitely agree. Great point. Look at that. Look at him.
Wow.
Oh, look at that.
So imagine how that will look in a history book. Like
that is so
impetus. This picture is the impetus that the artist used to create the sculpture that we were just looking at.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got like a minute or so left. I want us to prepare for the Super Bowl. This is what's trending right now on social media. Take a look and get prepared. Take a look. Check this out.
It's been 2,190 days.
Dude, Rihanna, we waited for you.
It's been over 6 years since the 9-time Grammy winner dropped her last album.
Everybody is waiting
where
for
have
it.
you been?
We've been impatiently waiting
The
for
last project we got from Rihanna.
The fans just predicted the end of
And
Rihanna.
everybody has
You needed me.
We're so ready.
Can I just say one thing? Now I'm a Rihanna fan. Oh,
I know you're a Rihanna
What
fan.
does that mean?
she is about to kill this joint.
I am so ready to see. I'm for it. Just for her as an entertainer.
Woo!
I'm for it.
I mean, woo!
Yeah. In the background too is saying, where has Riri been? Riri's been making Fenty and Savage Fenty.
She just hasn't been doing her music thing. It's been 6 years since she dropped the album.
First thing, Rihanna, we all know, is multi-talented, multifaceted, multi-hyphenated. But she didn't need to do it like that. I'm sorry. Then she picked the one song.
Yeah, I thought that too. She put the "You Need Me." Yeah, I was like, wow. Okay.
We do need you, Riri. We need you.
Riri.
We need you.
Well, I would like to just say, like, I had a lot of thoughts on last year's Super Bowl show for a lot of reasons, considering the rationale and stuff behind it, but we won't go there today. But I am looking forward to seeing Rihanna, given that she hasn't been like on a large stage in, it's been a while. I think like 2016, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. And now we're gonna see like a more I guess, mature Rihanna, because now she's a mother. Like,
she's
all that's going to be in the
bigger,
context of like her performance. And I remember Ryan Coogler saying that's one of the reasons why he tapped her to come and do the song "Lift Me Up" for Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, because of like those changes and progressions in her life, and he thought that she would just, do the song justice, which it's a beautiful song. I really do think it was great. I hope she sings it at the show.
No, of course she's singing it, and they're already talking about Grammy for the song. So we got about 30 seconds of it. Nira, what's your take? You've been a Rihanna fan for a while.
I'm just really excited, and I can't wait till she like drops a new album. Of course, I'm like hoping that she drops a new album as well, because her last album was such fire. That's of course the album that had "You Needed Me" on there. Oh my gosh, I played that out in 2016.
I played the album out.
Yeah, I definitely played the album out. Like, I said it. All of it.
The album was fire.
I wonder what surprises she'll have. If maybe there'll be any guest artists, maybe she'll have.
Hey, look, that's what I was going to say. That we got 30 seconds, but I was going to say she's probably one of the few artists that can bring like a Beyonce as a guest.
I don't think she will though.
Well,
I don't know why. I just have a feeling she's gonna just come out there.
She might bring ASAP Rocky though.
Yeah, like it's my comeback. It's all about Riri.
I just want Riri. I'm good. She can do the whole ASAP. ASAP fine ass can hold the baby on the side. Hold the baby.
Just hold the baby, bro. Just hold the baby.
It definitely won't be Drake though. I don't think.
No, right. Ladies, I appreciate you both. Corinna, Denise, Nira Muhammad, y'all are fantastic, phenomenal. Great way to end the week here on The Culture. Thank you so much for being so good for The Culture Sisters. We truly appreciate and love y'all. Thank you.
Always.
All right, folks. That's going to do it for us. I thank all of you. I want to thank my man Rashad for checking in as well. I want to thank my dynamic team, King Keenan, Joel, and my control room. Folks, make sure y'all do your part this weekend for Dr. King's holiday. Find something to volunteer for. Find something to be involved in. Renew your commitment to social justice. Most importantly, be a voice for the voiceless, as our dear beloved brother was. Make sure you also check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. Make sure you can download the app for free. And most importantly, continue to support us financially as we're doing the great work of Black media work. Folks, that's going to do it for us. Follow me on all social media, The Real Farajii. I'm at Farajii on Twitter. I love to connect with you to continue building our community. And most importantly, have a fantastic weekend. Let us be safe. Let us be peaceful. Stay tuned. Up next is RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk on Tuesday for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Have a great weekend. Peace.